Amherst, thank you for coming out, and Happy New Year. And to all of you in the nosebleed section, and to the many thousands of people outside, thank you all very much. As we begin this new year, it seems to me that 2016 can be a pivotal year in the history of our country. And what we can accomplish this year is at a time when we face massive crises nationally and globally, we have the unique opportunity to not only transform our economy, but transform our politics. And what this campaign is saying very loudly and clearly is that we will not accept a political system which is increasingly corrupt, which allows billionaires to buy elections, but that together we are going to revitalize American democracy and create a government which represents all of us, not just a handful of billionaires. I want to say just a few words about our campaign and the kinds of success that we have been having. When we began this campaign over 8 months ago, we had no money in our campaign coffers, we had no organization, and outside of New England, we were not particularly well known. And one of the points that many of the political pundits made, they say, Senator, if you're going to run a strong national campaign, you've got to do what everybody else does. You need to create a super PAC and beg millionaires and billionaires in corporate America for funds. Well, truth is, I do not represent the billionaire class. I do not represent corporate America, so we made the decision to let them keep their money. We would do it on our own. And what happened over the last 9 months is really extraordinary. We said to the American people that if you want to take on the billionaire class, we're going to need your help. And what's happened over the last 9 months is that we have received 2.5 million individual contributions, more than any campaign in the history of the United States. And what is extremely gratifying is that in this last quarter, the average contribution was less than $30. So what is revolutionary about all of that is that we are showing that you can run a national campaign, and what I believe will be a winning campaign without being dependent on big money. But it's not only the kind of support we've received at the grassroots level in terms of contributions. We have held meetings like this all across America. And we have, up to this point, brought out significantly more than 400 100,000 Americans who are prepared to stand and fight for a political revolution. You know, the narrative that often comes from the corporate media is people are disillusioned, they're tired, they're not going to be involved in the political process. Young people have, they're busy partying and doing what they do, they're not going to get involved. And yet what we are showing is there is a profound anger and disgust at the status quo. People want change. Reason that I think our campaign is going well brings me back to a discussion I had with a young man many months ago on the West Coast. The guy came up to me and said, "Bernie, what I like about your campaign is you are treating us as if we were intelligent human beings." Now, the truth is that in American politics today, treating people like they are intelligent human beings is a pretty radical idea. For much of the corporate media, what politics is about is a baseball game or it's a soap opera, it's what dumb thing somebody said the other day. But it is not about what this campaign is about, a serious discussion of the serious issues and finding a path forward to make this country what we all know it can become. I know that here in Amherst and surrounding towns you have some of the best colleges and universities in America. I know you have some great economics professors, but I want to tell you how I learned about economics, and it wasn't in a class. I learned about economics growing up in a 3.5-room apartment, rent-controlled apartment in Brooklyn, New York. And I learned the deepest lessons that one can learn about economics by seeing the tension and the problems in my own family, a family that did not have a whole lot of money. And what I learned is that the problems that I experienced, what I saw in my own family, takes place all across this country. My father came to this country at the age of 17 from Poland without any money, without being able to speak English. And my mom, he dropped out of high school in Poland, and my mother graduated high school. My dad never made a lot of money, always had a job, we were never poor. But there was always a stress in the family. My mother's dream was that she wanted to own a home of her own, get out of a rented apartment. She died young, never achieved that dream. And a lot of the tension in the family, which is true all over this country, came from, we don't have enough money to do this, and we don't have enough money to do that. So growing up in a 3.5-room rent-controlled apartment taught me lessons about economics that I have never forgotten. And that takes me to where we are today. In America today, we live in the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. But most Americans don't know that. And the reason that they don't know that is that almost all of the new income and wealth being generated is going to the top 1%. In America today, we have the most unequal distribution of income and wealth of almost any major country on earth, and it is worse today in our country than at any time since 1928 the year before the Great Depression. In America today, and I want you all to hear this, in America today, the top 1/10 of 1%, not 1%, top 1/10 of 1% owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. In America today, the 20 wealthiest people own more wealth than the bottom 50% of Americans. Today in America, the top, here's a Trump supporter worried about Mr. Trump's money. Supporters that the billionaires in this country will not continue to own this nation. Today in America, as I say, you have one family, the Walton family of Walmart, one family owning more wealth than the bottom 40% of Americans. And it is interesting that this one family is one of the major recipients of welfare in this country because the government has to provide Medicaid and food stamps because they are not paying their workers a living wage. Is not just wealth inequality, and what wealth is about is what we accumulate our whole lives. It is income. And here's the story. In my state, and I know it's true in Massachusetts, we have large numbers of people who are not working one job. They're working 2 jobs, sometimes they work 3 jobs to cobble together enough income and health care to provide for their families. And yet, despite the fact that we have people working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, despite the fact that mom works and dad works and often young kids work, it turns out that 58% of all new income generated in America is going to the top 1%. Are you ready for a radical idea?
Yeah.
Yes.
How about creating an economy that is not rigged, an economy that works for working families, not just a handful of billionaires? Yeah! And when we talk about economics, it's important to understand that real unemployment, as opposed to official unemployment, real unemployment is close to 10% if we include those people who have given up looking for work or are working part-time. Yes, without doubt, we are a heck of a lot better economically today than we were when George W. Bush left office. Many of my Republican friends, they suffer from a very serious illness, and we should not be hard on people who have serious illnesses. Amnesia is not a joke. Very serious problem. And they all seem to have forgotten where we were 7 years ago. But we have not forgotten. We remember 800,000 jobs a month being lost. We remember a $1.4 trillion deficit being created. We remember the world's financial system on the verge of collapse. Now, Republican friends seem to have forgotten all of that. But during this campaign, I think we will remind them. But having said that, there is another truth. And that truth is, yes, we are better off today than we were 7 years ago, but for the last 40 years in this country, under Republican administrations and Democratic administrations, the great middle class, once the envy of the entire world, has been disappearing. Median family income today, $4,000 less than it was in 1999. The median male worker, that guy right in the middle of the economy, in inflation adjusted for dollars, is earning $700 less than he made 42 years ago. The woman worker in the middle of the economy, making $1,000 a year less than she made in 2007. So here is the radical idea. How about creating an economy that works for the middle class, not just a handful of billionaires? One of the fun things about running for president is you can force discussion, sometimes, not always, on issues that people prefer not to talk about. And one of the issues that I have been talking about, although I must confess the media doesn't show a lot of interest in it, and that is the tragedy of youth unemployment in America. Okay, we don't talk about it. But here's what's going on. A couple of months ago, I asked some economists in DC to do a study for me, and I said, tell me what real unemployment and underemployment is for high school graduates between 17 and 20. Here's what they reported. What they reported is, if the kids were white, 33%, Latino, 36%, African American, 51%. Now these numbers are obviously a tragedy unto themselves for what they mean to kids. Young people want to get out into the world, stand on their own 2 feet, make a few bucks. But it also relates to another tragedy, and that is that today we have more people in jail than any other country on earth. More people in jail. More people in jail than China. Now, if anyone here thinks there is not a correlation between 2.2 million people being in jail today and the United States seeing outrageously high levels of youth unemployment, you would be mistaken. So here is radical idea number 2. How about investing in jobs and education for our kids rather than jails and incarceration? How about fighting to end institutional racism? In a very broken criminal justice system. So here is my first promise to you today, that at the end of my first term, if elected, we will not have more people in jail than any other country. What we will be doing is making sure that we're keeping people out of jail. And when people get into jail, we're going to find them a path back to civil society, not return to jail. About a broken criminal justice system. There's so much, and I urge you to go to my website, berniesanders.com, because we have a very long discussion about that. But I want to just say a couple of things on that subject today. For a start, what I've learned in the last few months, people ask me, what have I learned on the campaign trail? I'll tell you what I did learn, and I did not really know this before. What I learned is that over the last 20, 30 years, millions of people in this country have established police records, criminal records, for possession of marijuana. And what I should have known, and I really didn't, is that when you have a police record for something like possession of marijuana, and you go walking into a job opportunity, you go to the employer, and the employer says, well, have you ever been arrested? Yeah, I was arrested. The likelihood of getting that job significantly diminishes. And if you can't find the job, you get into trouble, and then you really end up in jail. So what do? I think what common sense suggests is that we have to take a very hard look at the so-called war on drugs. Right now, under the Federal Controlled Substance Act, marijuana is listed in a Schedule I category along with heroin. Marijuana, well, there are a lot of arguments about, good and the bad of marijuana, but nobody thinks that marijuana equals heroin. That is why I have introduced legislation and will fight for, as president, to get marijuana out of the Federal Controlled Substance Act. And my reason for that is not to advocate for or against marijuana, but I don't want to see kids' lives destroyed for having been arrested for possessing marijuana. And by the way, as is the case with many other issues, this becomes a racial issue. It turns out that whites and blacks, just according to the studies, white and black communities smoke marijuana at about the same rate. Blacks get arrested 4 times more than whites for possession of marijuana. When we talk about our economy, and we ask ourselves, why is it that the people in our country, and I hope you all know this, we work the longest hours of any people in the industrialized world. Do you all know that? The Japanese are very, very hard workers. We work longer hours than the people of Japan. And when we ask ourselves why people are working 50 or 60 hours a week, the answer is very simple. Wages in our country are just too damn low. I was in Detroit, Michigan a year ago, talking to a bunch of young people, mostly African-American young people. And they are working in fast food places for $7.25 an hour, the federal minimum wage. They can't even get 40 hours a week of work in one place, and they're working in 2 or 3 places. Gotta get on a bus to go to another place. Well, you can take out your calculator, or you can figure it out, but nobody survives on $7.25 an hour, period. The federal minimum wage is a starvation wage. We've got to raise it to a living wage. And in my view, a living wage is $15 an hour over the next several years. And I hope very much, and I know it's the case, that the men in this room will stand with the women and fight for pay equity for women's rights. There is no rational economic reason, none, why women are making 79 cents on the dollar compared to men, except for old-fashioned sexism, and together we are going to end it. In this campaign season, we see a lot of Republicans running around the country and telling us how much they believe in family values. They just love families. But you know, and I know, what they mean by family values. And what they mean is that no woman in this room, in this state, in this country, should have the right to control her own body. I disagree. Strikes me is the hypocrisy of what these Republicans are saying every day. They're out there in Congress, I see it every day, how much they hate government. We gotta cut Social Security, privatize it. We gotta voucherize Medicare. We gotta privatize the Postal Service. Get government off our backs. Except if you are a woman having to make a very difficult personal choice. Then they love government. And when Republicans talk about family values, they want to defund Planned Parenthood. I want to increase funding for Planned Parenthood. Republican colleagues talk about family values, they believe that our gay brothers and sisters should not have the right to marry. I disagree. Jane and I have been married for 27 years. We have 4 great kids, 7 beautiful grandchildren, and we believe very strongly in family values and in strengthening families. But when I talk about family values, I talk about ending the international disgrace of the United States being one of the very few countries in the entire world, industrialized or not industrialized, that does not guarantee paid family and medical leave. And I want everybody to appreciate how important this issue is and why virtually every other country on earth does guarantee paid and family medical leave. And that is that today in Vermont, Massachusetts, all over this country, women are giving birth. Let's hear it for the moms. A big day for mom, for dad, and for the baby as well. Pretty big day for the baby. But here's what is not so funny. And that is, if mom is a working class woman, or maybe a lower income woman, she gives birth today, she will have to go back to work a week from now or 2 weeks from now because she does not have enough income coming in to sustain her family. And I want you to think about that. You have moms, perhaps moms who are giving birth for the first time, being separated from their babies at what everybody knows is the most important period in a human being's life, forcibly separated because she has to go back to work to earn money to take care of her family. In my view, that is a disgrace, and that is why I am strongly supporting legislation that provides 3 months of paid family leave. Our country will be a different and better place when moms and dads can stay home and get to know and love and bond with their babies. When we talk about our economy, and when I missed something. Oh, the baby, all right. Baby agrees, that's right. She wants her mom to be home for 3 months, right? When we talk about the economy, and when pollsters go out and they call you up and they say, what is uppermost on your mind? In most cases, what people talk about are jobs and the economy. Why is that? And the answer is, everybody kind of instinctually knows how fragile the economy is. So if you are 55 years of age and you go to work tomorrow, and you have to feel that maybe your employer will say, Joe, thanks for 30 years of work, but we're going to have to get rid of you because we got somebody half your age that we can hire for half your wages. That happens. Or you're afraid that you go to work and your employer says, well, you know what? I can't give you 40 hours a week anymore. I got to reduce it to 29 because we can't afford, we don't choose not to provide health care or other benefits to you. Or maybe you are a college graduate and you're out there looking hard for work commensurate with your education, finding it very hard to get those jobs. Or maybe you are a high school graduate or a high school dropout and you can't find any work at all. So it seems to me that when we have real unemployment in this country of close to 10%, youth unemployment off the charts, it is imperative that we pass a federal jobs program providing millions of decent paid jobs to our people. In my view, we should be hiring teachers, not firing teachers. When our infrastructure, roads, bridges, water systems, levees, dams, rail, airports, are in desperate need of repair, a $1 trillion investment to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure will create up to 13 million decent paying jobs, and that is what we should do. When we talk about jobs, it is not just creating millions of jobs that we desperately need, it is preventing the loss of millions of jobs due to disastrous trade policies. against NAFTA, CAFTA, and PNCR. As someone who is leading the effort against the TPP. We need trade policies that work for working families and for poor people abroad, not just the CEOs of large multinational corporations. And when we talk about the economy, it is important to have the courage to talk about the elephant in the room. And that is, we must and cannot run away from the greed and recklessness and illegal behavior on Wall Street. As a result of the outrageous behavior of Wall Street, this country was driven into the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. Millions of people lost their jobs, and many of those people are still unemployed or underemployed. Millions of people lost their homes, and a lot of people lost their life savings. And yet today, 3 out of the 4 largest banks are bigger now than they were when we bailed them out because they were too big to fail.
Where was our share?
Today, you have the six largest financial institutions issuing about 2/3 of the credit cards and about 35% of all mortgages. Now, it seems to me that when you have financial institutions that are too big to fail, they are too big to exist. We've got to break them up. We need a financial system in which banks make affordable loans to small and medium-sized businesses in the productive economy to help us grow jobs, to make affordable loans to people to purchase homes and automobiles, etc. What we do not need is a small number of financial institutions, and the 6 largest in this country today have assets equivalent to over 50% of the GDP of America. We do not need a handful of financial institutions whose only goal in life is to make as much money as they can for themselves and to ignore the needs of the productive economy. And here is something else that I think speaks volumes about where we are as a nation and about our criminal justice system. Some kid smokes marijuana, gets arrested, has a criminal record. But if you are the CEO of a huge financial institution that destroys the lives of millions of people, you live with impunity. So what we have is a situation really quite amazing, and adding to the disillusionment and the frustration of ordinary Americans. You have a situation today where not only are the large banks too big to fail, but the bankers themselves are too big to jail. So how about a criminal justice system which treats all people, regardless of their wealth and power, equally? often ask me, well, you know, a lot of important issues out there. What is the most important issue? And there really is no just one issue. But there is one issue that impacts all other issues. And that is that over 5 years ago, in a disastrous 5-4 Supreme Court decision, the United States Supreme Court, in the Citizens United case, said to the wealthiest people in this country, what they said is, okay guys, you already own much of the United States' economy. We are now going to allow you the opportunity to purchase the United States government. You can spend as much money as you want to elect candidates who will represent the rich and the powerful. And that is exactly what is happening today. You got people like the Koch brothers, the second wealthiest family in America. They and a few of their friends will be spending $900 million on this election cycle. And these are guys, Koch brothers are guys who, they don't want to cut Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid. They want to eliminate Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. They want to give huge tax breaks to the wealthiest people in this country. In my view, what we have right now is a corrupt campaign finance system. Our very democracy is being undermined. When you have a handful of families able to spend more money in an election than either of the two major political parties, you're not looking at democracy, you're looking at oligarchy, and together we're going to put an end to it. Revolution. I've touched on many aspects of what I mean by that. At the heart of it all is the need for us not only to overturn Citizens United, not only move toward public funding of elections, not only ending all of this Republican effort at voter suppression, but what we need to do is to create a vibrant democracy. We should not be having one of the lowest voter turnouts in the world. We must have one of the highest voter turnouts in the world. And when we look at where we are as a nation, I think everybody in this room knows that if our economy is going to succeed, we need to have the best educated workforce on earth. And by the way, that was once the case. That is no longer the case. It is beyond my comprehension that in our great country today, we have hundreds of thousands of bright and qualified young people who want to go to college, but are unable to do so for one reason. And that reason is their families lack the funds. And that is why I will fight to make certain that every public college and university in America is tuition free. To know why that is in fact a revolutionary idea, because it goes deeper than some may think. As I mentioned earlier, I grew up in a family where neither of my parents went to college. And what happens when you grow up in a family where parents don't go to college. You kind of associate with other kids and other families where parents also did not go to college. So you got millions of young people in America today whose idea of going to college, or belief that they can go to college, is about as strong as their belief that they can go to the moon. They don't know people who have gone to college. It is an impossible dream. If, in fact, we can make public colleges and universities tuition free, and if every parent and every teacher and every kid understands that if he or she does their schoolwork seriously, that in fact, regardless of the income of their families, they will be able to get a college education. That, my friends, is revolutionary and will transform America. Not everybody has the inclination or the desire to go to college. God only knows that we need a whole lot of plumbers and carpenters and electricians. Don't God think the training is done. And when we talk about higher education, there is another issue that we have got to address. And that is the fact that millions of our people, young and some not so young, are struggling under very, very oppressive levels of student debt. And I suspect some of them are in this very room. Let me just tell you a couple of stories. A year or 2 years ago, I can't remember, we had a meeting in Burlington, Vermont on this issue. And a woman was there who had wanted and did go to medical school. And she wanted to practice primary care with low-income people, which is exactly what we need to see happen in the medical community. Anyhow, she went to medical school, and the price she paid for that was $300,000 in debt. So I said, wow, 300, I can't believe that. Well, I was in Iowa a few months ago, and I said that. A young woman comes up to me and says, $300,000 debt. I just graduated dental school. And by the way, we have a major dental crisis in terms of affordable dental care. We need far more dentists. And she said, I just graduated dental school, $400,000 in debt. Now, it is crazy. I mean, that is just on the surface, totally crazy. Talked to a guy in Nevada last week. He said, I think he said he was about 55 years of age. He has been carrying student debt for 25 years. He has more debt today than he had because of high interest rates when he took out the debt to begin with 25 years ago. He is worried that when he gets Social Security, they're going to garnish his Social Security payment in order to pay the student debt. You have families, young people, graduating school or dropping out, who are paying 20-25% of their limited incomes on student debt, can't buy a home, can't buy a car, can't get married, can't have kids. That's pretty crazy stuff. Now, what's even crazier is that you have people out there who are paying 6, 8, 10% interest rates on student debt at a time when you can refinance your home for 2, 3, 4%. Our legislation does, pretty simple, we're going to allow people to refinance their student loans at the lowest interest rates they can find. Now, the truth is that making public colleges and universities tuition-free, expanding Pell Grants, and lowering interest rates on student debt, pretty expensive proposition, about $70 billion a year. How are we going to pay for that? I will tell you. We are going to impose a tax on Wall Street speculation. When Wall Street went broke, they came begging to the middle class for a bailout. Now it is Wall Street's turn to help the working families. What this campaign is about is thinking big, not small, having a worldview which understands that in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish. And let me give you an example of that. There is one country in the industrialized world, just one, that doesn't guarantee health care to all people as a right. You are living in that country, and together we are going to change that. I just don't understand how it happens that in the United Kingdom, they provide health care to all of their people, and yet we spend in our country almost 3 times per person what they spend in the UK. I don't understand how France is able to provide health care to all of their people as a right. We spend 50% more per capita than do the French. I live 50 miles away from the Canadian border. They provide health care to all of their people far, far more cost effectively than we do. And yet, despite the fact that we are spending far more per capita on health care than do the people of any other nation, despite the fact that we are paying by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs, despite the fact that 29 million Americans have no health insurance, despite the fact that even more are uninsured or underinsured, we have a government that refuses to go forward and do what every other country on earth is doing, and I say it is time to move forward. That the pharmaceutical industry, which rips us off every day, will resist us. I am more than aware that the private insurance companies love the idea of making billions in profit from human sickness. But despite the opposition of the private insurance companies and the drug companies and the medical equipment suppliers, I will do everything I can to move this country forward to a Medicare for all single-payer program. I want to thank the National Nurses United, their union. And here's the point. These are nurses who have dedicated their lives to keeping us as healthy as possible and treating us when we are ill. And they want to be able to do their jobs as best they can. And they understand that if millions of people have no health insurance, if millions of people have high deductibles and high co-payments, they, as medical providers, cannot do the job that they are sworn to do. So thank you, nurses, for working with me. When we talk about our responsibilities as human beings, as adults, parents, grandchildren, I think there is nothing more important than making sure that we leave this planet healthy and habitable for our children and our grandchildren. sit on both the Educational and the Environmental Committee, and in that capacity, I have talked to scientists not only throughout our country, but throughout the world. And let me tell you what I know that most of you know, and that climate change is real, it is caused by human activity, and it is already causing devastating problems all over the world. And what the scientists are telling us is that if we do not get our act together in a very short period of time, this planet will be between 5 and 10 degrees warmer by the end of the century, meaning more floods, more drought, more extreme weather disturbances, more acidification of the ocean, more rising sea levels, more international conflict as people around the world fight over limited natural resources. That's the bad news. The good news is that we know what we have to do. And what we have to do is take on the fossil fuel industry. We have to transform our energy system and work with countries like China, Russia, India, countries all over the world in transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energies. We have a moral responsibility to do that, and as president, I will help lead this country, working with other countries to do just that. We are ending the holiday season, and holiday season is often synonymous with families, people traveling long distances to get together. And I think all of us, especially at this time of year, should be mindful that there are 11 million people in this country who are undocumented, who are frightened, and who are living in the shadows. In my view, what we must do as a nation is pass comprehensive immigration reform and move those 11 million undocumented people toward a path toward citizenship. To too many young Latinos who are literally scared to death that tomorrow their mom, their dad will be deported. Our job must be, in terms of immigration reform, must be to unite families, not divide families. I think everybody in this room, everybody in this country knows that we are living in very dangerous and difficult times. A lot of chaos all over the world. You turn on TV and you see levels of barbarity that are unimaginable. In my view, it is not simply a question in terms of foreign policy of being tough. We have got to be smart. When you are a member of Congress, perhaps the most difficult vote that you have, and what is the most consequential, has to do with issues of war and peace. And the reason for that is you know that how you vote will mean, or could mean, life or death for people in your own state. And back in 2002, when I was for months member of the House, I listened very, very carefully to what Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld and all those guys were saying about the need to invade Iraq. I listened very carefully, and I did not believe them. I voted against the war.
Thank you. Yeah.
And if you go to my website, or you go to YouTube, just check out the speech that I gave on the floor of the House. And it gives me absolutely no pride, no joy, to tell you that much of what I feared would happen after the overthrow of this brutal dictator, Saddam Hussein, what would happen when you had a political vacuum and the kind of destabilization that would occur. And that's what happened. So when we talk about foreign policy, I know I hear every day many of my, the other guys running for office, they're very, very tough, all these things. But do not forget that when they are being tough and their words are very, very loud, they're not talking about their kids going to war, they're talking about other people's kids. I represent in the Senate one of the smallest states in the country, but I know, based on the many, many funerals that I attended in Vermont, the very, very heavy price that that war played on the lives of people in my state and people all over this country. Very few people know what the cost of war is about. I'm the former chairman of the Senate Veterans Committee. I've worked very hard to do our best for the men and women who put their lives on the line to defend this country. And I have learned a lot from the veterans community, from folks who fought in World War II and Korea and throughout all these wars. And what I learned about the recent wars is not just that we lost 6,700 men and women in Iraq and Afghanistan. What we also saw is 500,000 coming home with PTSD and traumatic brain injury. What we have seen are suicide rates off the charts. What we have seen is families split apart, divorce levels much too high, children terribly impacted. In my view, war must be the last resort, not the first resort. Today, the world finds itself faced with a barbaric organization called ISIS. And I don't have to tell you what they believe in and what they have done. And in my view, ISIS must be destroyed. But the question is, how do we achieve that goal in a way that is smart? How do we learn the lessons of the war in Iraq? And this is what I think. I think what needs to happen is there needs to be an international coalition put together. The United States cannot and should not do it alone. Recently, in a part of the world, the Middle East, the Gulf region, where there are not many heroes, where what we see every day is worse and worse. In Jordan, the king there is King Abdullah II. And in a world with very few heroes, he has kind of stood out, having Jordan take in all kinds of refugees. And this is what King Abdullah recently said. I want you to hear what he said, and I'm paraphrasing him. But basically what he said recently, he said, look, by definition, ISIS and terrorism is an international issue. Of course it is. We saw what happened in Paris, we saw what happened in San Bernardino, we saw what happened in Lebanon. We've seen what's happened all over the world. Of course it's an international issue. But this is what he said. He said, at the end of the day, it must be the Muslim nations themselves who destroy ISIS on the ground. Because what is involved here is a war for the soul of Islam. A war against people like ISIS or Al-Qaeda, who have hijacked their religion and converted it into terrorism and intolerance in a way that we have never seen before. So I agree with King Abdullah. What I believe is the United States, the UK, France, Germany, and Russia. We got to put aside our geopolitical differences, unite in support of Muslim troops on the ground. Finally, by the way, we may be seeing some good news. It is no secret to anybody here, no great secret, sad state of affairs. The Iraqi army has been a pathetic fighting force. But what we have seen recently is maybe some significant improvements. They have now retaken Ramadi, a big deal, with American air support. ISIS has lost 40% of the territory they controlled in Iraq in the last year. So I believe that the future there is an international coalition with Muslim troops on the ground. And I believe, and will do everything that I can, to see that our young men and women in the military do not find themselves in perpetual warfare in the quagmire of the Middle East. I've gone on probably too long, but let me just conclude by saying this. What this campaign is about is not just electing somebody as president. That means nothing unless we work together to transform this country. The last thing I want to do is be a president who does not accomplish what needs to happen. I cannot do it alone. So I need your help, not just in the campaign. I need your help the day after the election and year after year after that. Please do not tell me or tell yourselves that in this great country with our energy, our brains, our great universities, don't tell me that we cannot guarantee health care to all people as a right. Don't tell me that we cannot have a great pre-K and child care system rather than a dysfunctional one. Do not tell me that in the wealthiest country on earth that all of our people who have the desire and the ability cannot get a higher education regardless of the income of their families. Please don't tell us that the United States cannot successfully lead the world in transforming our energy system and saving this planet for our kids and our grandchildren. Please don't tell me that at a time of massive income and wealth inequality that we must continue to have the highest rate of childhood poverty and more people in jail than any other country on earth. I don't accept that. So if you are ready to wage a political revolution, If you're ready to do that, please bring out your friends, your families, get those people who have become cynical, to get them re-involved in the political struggle. We're going to win here in Massachusetts, and we're going to win this election. Thank you all.